a psychologist specializing in the field of physician wellness. He's an international expert. He's done over 8,000 lectures and has published 9 books. And on that note, today's program will be on leading and living with emotional intelligence, the key to thriving in healthcare today. And on that note, Wayne, maybe you could start off by telling us what is EQ and why does it matter?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. And Jason, you might want to adjust your camera so we can see that handsome face. All we can see is your nose up. I need to see that great smile of yours. There you go. Thank you for having me back, my friend. EQ is important in a nutshell because the higher the emotional intelligence, the more success you're going to have in life. That's the punchline of 30 years of research, not my research, but in the field. No matter what we study, who are the best parents, who makes most money, who lives longest with whatever factors, the higher the emotional intelligence, the more adaptively people cope. Now, emotional intelligence is different than raw intelligence. There are some people who aren't real smart from a IQ standpoint, but have great emotional intelligence. And other people have real high IQs, but don't have great emotional intelligence. You know that just intuitively. So if you think about, for example, 2 people, who is someone that is comfortable to be around, whose style is engaging, whom you tend to trust, versus the flip side of that, someone who is uncomfortable to be around, who stirs your defenses, who is difficult to trust, and you don't necessarily follow or engage with. You're talking about someone with, in the first instance, high EQ, in the second instance with low EQ. In a nutshell, what EQ means is having the ability to accurately identify and appropriately manage your own emotions and those of other people. I'll modify it just a little bit. Accurately identify and appropriately manage your own emotions, and the ability to accurately identify and respond adaptively to other people's emotions. That emotional intelligence is about having an acute awareness of and skill set regarding personal competence. I've got insight into myself. What are my scripts? What are my patterns? What are my thinking habits? I've got the capacity for self-regulation. I can control my tendency to talk too much or not talk enough, or my temper, or my anxiety, or my stresses. And I've got the capacity also to sustain motivation even during hard times. So those are the 3 skills within the self-management branch of emotional intelligence: insight, self-regulation, motivation. Then the other branch of emotional intelligence has to do with relationship competencies. And here is the capacity for empathy. I am able to put my defenses down enough to really understand the heart of another person. And secondly, I've got a wide range of social skills. I can put a wide range of types of people in a wide range of circumstances at ease in my presence. And then the third is to be able to engage with them and influence them, to be able to communicate with them, to be able to care for them, to be able to lead them possibly. So within the relationship branch are the components of empathy, social skill, wide range of social skill, and influence. That's what EQ is.
So what are some practical tips for how we can improve our EQ through broadening and deepening these particular skill areas?
Okay, well, let's jump right into this. So the primary skill for an emotionally intelligent person, we alluded to in a prior broadcast, and it is with routine, go to the balcony, so to speak, in your life, look down and assess, how did I just do? Now, it could be walking from one meeting to another. It could be leaving home, driving to work. It could be driving from work back to home. self-reflection practices are hallmark characteristics of emotionally intelligent people. They're continuously curious, not about what other people did that may have been, boneheaded things, but that meeting went a certain way. How might I have shaped it differently? That conversation went a certain way. What were my steps in the ballet that went on between me and my family, or me and my team at work? So they go to the balcony and look down with self-reflection and ask, what did I learn from that I might apply next time to make it go better? A second skill in terms of that same kind of self-reflection, let's walk through these a little exercise. So I want you to mentally picture, or in a piece of paper draw, if you're seated somewhere, an XY axis graph. So on the vertical axis, what we're going to be charting is your energy level. And on the horizontal axis, we're going to be charting your degree of pleasantness that you feel today. At the elbow of the graph is going to be, I've got low energy, I'm on -5, I'm falling asleep, and this is the worst day ever in my life. Okay. And as you go up the horizontal, if you go up the vertical, the energy at the top is, I'm raring to go. This is the best day ever. And at the far right hand side of the horizontal, pleasantness, this is the best mood I've ever been in. If you put an X in the 4 quadrants of the graph, where would your X fall today in terms of energy, in pleasantness? Are you really? I'm feeling pretty energetic, but I'm feeling grouchy. So it's not a very pleasant feeling. Or I'm high energy and best day ever. Or if you're down at the L of the graph. I'm about to fall asleep. This guy's boring me to death, and I'm in a lousy mood. All right, so you just did one step that's important uh, in terms of emotional intelligence, which I've got to, with insight, figure out where I am in terms of mood and in terms of energy. Now, the second step is I want you to think of the single word that best describes how you are feeling at this moment. The single word that best describes how you're feeling at this moment. Second step in process of staying emotion intelligent is to be able to label your emotions. You can't manage something you can't label. And we don't have a very diverse language in our culture for managing emotions. Most people would say, my options are I'm either mad, sad, glad, scared, surprised, or disgusted. We default to those. But this is an interesting little exercise, guys. Google emotions. You get graphs or charts that come up that are mind-boggling. There are 100 different emotions, different flavors, from I feel like an idiot, I'm feeling itchy, I'm feeling fine, I'm feeling thankful, I'm feeling overjoyed, I'm feeling whatever. Now, you may be splitting hairs, you might say, but here's the point. We've got to have the capacity to identify what we're feeling. So a skill that's important is to actually identify what we're feeling, and it's harder than you might realize.
Especially for men who only have like 4 or 5 of those, right?
Yeah, especially if you tend to default to those. So far we've chosen a quadrant for where you're going to be in the mood meter. We talked about what you're feeling. Now, the next step would be to become a practice at figuring out, why am I feeling what I feel? Now, here I'm gonna get a little bit shrinky. Many times we have learned it's more okay to feel certain kind of feelings than to feel other kinds of feelings, and we organize ourselves in kind of a shorthand. So this is a thought exercise. In your life journey, which feelings were you encouraged and rewarded for experiencing and expressing? And which feelings were you discouraged and punished for feeling or expressing? Here's how we can do this little exercise. I want you to imagine, if you will, the place, the primary place in which you grew up, your family home or apartment. Now, in your mind's eye, I want you to picture your people, your family are in that home. You're outside. You're maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. Now, in your mind's eye, you enter your home and you're whimpering and kind of whining because you got hurt on the playground. Who reacted to you how in that memory or in that fantasy? Who reacts to you how when you come in whimpering and whining? Okay, stop that scene. Back it back up. You're outside, your family's inside. You burst through the door. You're feeling really proud of yourself. You're kind of bragging because you did a great thing on the playground or at school today. You just knocked it out of the park. Who reacted to you how when you showed pride and confidence in yourself? Back the scene up. Your family's inside, you're outside. You walk in and you're angry because your mom or dad forgot to pick you up or something happened at school and you're angry with somebody. Who reacted to your show of anger how? Back the scene up. Your family's inside, you're outside. You come in and you're feeling playful and you're teasing and laughing and wanting to interact playfully with people in your family. Who reacted how to your playfulness? Back the scene up. They're inside, you outside. You come in, you're feeling affectionate and you want to go and have physical affection with some people in your family. Who reacts how to that tenderness that you're showing? Now, I don't mean to be too shrinky, but most of us, there are no perfect people. So we were born into imperfect families, and our family does the best they can. But many of us then got assigned or assumed certain roles. Big boys don't cry, big girls don't cry. It's okay to be serious. It's not okay to be playful. It's okay to have a stomach ache. It's not okay to have a big head. Don't be too proud of yourself because that'll be dangerous in some way. So part of emotional intelligence is realizing that the answers to the question, what do I tend to do when I feel mad, sad, glad, scared, surprised, disgusted? Let's just use those as an example. And having you, Jason, you and I have talked about this, having worked with thousands of medical professionals, so many times we learn it's okay to show anger. It's not okay to show vulnerability. It's okay to, we default to anger or irritability instead of showing sadness, instead of showing I feel worried, instead of showing I feel anxious. If you can't identify it, you can't manage it adaptively. And that's how we end up with this proverbial knotted ball of twine internally, that we're so invested in people disentangling with regularity through the Center for Provider Wellbeing, through your work, Jason, and the other great folks at Behavioral Health, and through these webinars. So we're working through the stages here.
So what next?
Okay, so the next thing, we've recognized your emotions. You understand what causes in some of the consequences. You understand some about labeling those emotions and why you tend to default to those. The next thing in the real work, long term, of course, is regulating, is self-regulating. So with thoughtfulness, I would encourage you to routinely pause when you go to the balcony and not just reflect on what just happened, but also prepare yourself for what's about to happen. Consider your circumstance today, or consider what you're getting ready to do next. You're going into a patient's room whom you know is depressed, or you're going into a patient's room whom you know is angry because they've been kept waiting, or you're driving home, or you're going into a meeting where you've got to deliver feedback to someone they don't want to hear, or you're going into a meeting that should be a celebration. Those are very different contexts, right? What might be the most desirable adaptive feeling or energy state for you, given the context you're getting ready to enter. Now, listen, this is common sense, not commonly practiced. If people practice this one thing, I'd be out of business. If they would just hit the pause button regularly and say, okay, now wait, I'm not a one-trick pony. Whatever has happened in the course of the day has gotten me in this kind of a mood, but now I'm getting ready to switch context. Let me pause for a moment and re-regulate my physiology, my thinking, my energy, and my mood. We can regulate these things to better match the demand characteristics of the context or the relationship I'm getting ready to enter into here. And then given my current state, what strategies might I use to get myself into a more adaptive or appropriate state or frame of mind? You know, simply put, if we're dealing with a person we know is depressed, we should not come in with high energy. You got to match before you can lead. We've got to join people where they are and then gradually help them go to another place. If you're self-regulating personally, you know, using music to alter your mood. If you're feeling sad, you don't want to put rock and roll hoochie cue music on as the first choice. Put something soothing and then gradually ratchet up the rhythms of the music, to put it simplistically. So we intuitively do this kind of adjusting with emotional intelligence. But what I'm encouraging you to do is to really be kind of programmatic about it, just so that you can better match your energy and mood with the demand characteristic of what you're facing.
So in a way, it sort of sounds like sports, where you would visualize ahead of time the specific situations in that and how you would handle them.
That's a really great analogy. And embedded in an analogy is another thing from sports, which are great performers are great at hitting the pause button physiologically. And they've got biofeedback studies on this that show great sports performers don't get jacked up and stay jacked up. They have a fluctuation of sympathetic arousal, parasympathetic calming, sympathetic arousal, parasympathetic calming. Otherwise, they just get fried. And the same is true for us getting through a day in our style of communicating with other people or managing our own energies. You want to have that variability of arousal, calm, arousal, calm, arousal, calm. So anything you can do that effectively allows you to hit the pause button. Let me reset back down to baseline, my physiology and my emotions will tend to follow. You can't manage your emotions if you don't manage your physiology. This is why learning deep breathing, learning meditation, learning distraction or delay or reframing techniques help you to hit that pause button. It's also important to be aware of, as you're preparing yourself to re-regulate, to get into a better energy state and mood state to match the demand characteristics of what you're getting ready to do. It's important to be aware of the internal stories, in quote, we tell ourselves. Now, so many of us spend a tremendous amount of our time telling ourselves upsetting stories. That meeting didn't go well is because this one doesn't like me, the other one doesn't like me. God only knows what's going to happen next meeting. I can't wait. Well, I'm going to put them down because they put me down in this meeting. And now I'm going to go into the next meeting with people with whom I hadn't even interacted yet, but I'm already angry and I'm irritated or I'm demoralized, whatever it is. And it's not based on all that. It's not just based on what happened. What happened last hour was upsetting, but what I'm creating a bridge, bringing all that upset into the next place. I've got to learn to hit the pause button. And we talk about this when we're doing coaching for anger management. If something happens that's upsetting to you, somebody cuts you off in traffic or some checkout person in the checkout line is messing around and not being efficient, that's inconveniencing or upsetting enough. Don't fill your head with stories of a persecution. They're purposely doing this to me,
Right.
or purposeful incompetence. They purposely don't know how to drive. They are purposely inefficient checkout line person. And I get myself all self-righteously wrought up. Most of the upset is based on the stories that I'm telling myself. In a real basic way, I always encourage clients that we're coaching, pay attention to your energy drainers and energy boosters. I've talked in prior sessions about, if you want to simplify this resilience business, develop a well-honed ear, manage your energy, attitude, and relationships. You know, what you drink, what you eat, how you breathe, what you think is either energizing you or de-energizing you. And throughout the day, emotionally intelligent people are good at hitting the pause button and resetting stress graphs by deploying energy boosters or energy replenishers that take very little time and cost no money. In the what can I do spiritually? Well, I can say a prayer. What can I do emotionally? I can think of something that makes me laugh. What can I do mentally? I can clear my head, meditate for a moment, or switch channels. Instead of staring at that computer channel, let me just for a moment look at a picture of one of my kids. Uh, what can I do in relationships? I can connect with someone who makes me feel comfortable just for a moment. In terms of, I alluded to this one before, and I want to be a little bit more methodical about it. This is from a nice framework um, uh, by a guy named Driver, who talks about emotional intelligence in healthcare, and he says we ought to have cue cards available to us that are kind of red light, yellow light, green light cue cards. The green light, or when I'm feeling good, let me fertilize the good feeling by having my favorite playlist on my iPhone that I can listen to keep the good. I would eat my favorite food, look at the videos that just are my well-being boosters, and celebrate what's good and right in my life. That's the green light stuff. If I'm in a lousy place, I've filled myself with negative stories and upsetting things have happened, I need emergency response uh, help. And we have internally cues that we can use to re-regulate ourselves and get us back on an emotionally intelligent track. The red zone things are positives that seldom change. They're the names of my children and or grandchildren. They're the pictures of those people that I love unconditionally. They're the memories or the cues, like pictures of places I've been when I've been most happy. I can't look at that without having some happiness come to the fore. There's the memory of, or the phrases of, or the sense of the person or persons, dead or alive, that I aspire to be most alike. I have a little container of face powder in my study at home. It's my grandmother's. And periodically, I just smell it. And my grandmother's been dead for 35 years, but that powder still smells just like her. As soon as I smell it, I feel a kind of calmness and well-being, because she was always just happy to see me no matter what. And it changes my mood, immediately changes my mood. What are you most proud of in your life about who you have been and what you've done? Now, the yellow card is stuff that has happened to you. Those are the thank you notes that people have written to you that are useful to read after some patient has lit you up, or the evaluations you got that were great evaluations, useful to look over as a reminder when you got an evaluation that wasn't such a great evaluation. Or the last experience where you turned a negative into a positive. If nothing else, do the 3 Ps. Think of 3 positives. When I'm at my most struggling, what are your 3 Ps? I'm a great dad. I'm a great husband. I'm a great, no matter what, I'm a knucklehead, but I'm a kind person to my grandchildren. or I don't always get the answer right, but I always care about the patients I deal with. I sometimes have to tell people things they don't want to hear, but I always do it with compassion. What are some things about you that are enduring? Those are some of the tactics we can use.
Right. Does that go along with, loaded words like always, never? I mean, should we challenge those
That's a great point. Absolutely, because the more primitive. You have talked with me about this, Jason, from a psychiatry standpoint. The more primitively aroused we are, the more our primitive brain functions kick in. Right, the more limbic system activity we got going on, and those brain areas think globally, in threatening, always, forever. Uh, uh, Never again, those kinds of extremist statements. In reality, is almost never like that. I mean, seldom is it like that. So what we want to do, anything to do that can calm that limbic system stuff and reactivate prefrontal cortex action, is going to allow you to think more broadly and build a more soothing framework. Language matters in that regard. An emotionally intelligent practice is I notice the language I use with others, but also I notice the language I'm using internally, and work hard to change that into a more adaptive direction.
In wrapping up here, Wayne, do you have any more general strategies that you could share with us?
Well, let me just summarize what we got. Number one, develop a self-reflection ritual. It doesn't have to be an hour long, waiting for an elevator, in between meetings, and so forth. Expand your emotional vocabulary. Try to pause periodically and say, well, it's not just fine, or I'm not just tired. The truth is, I'm feeling X, Y, or Z. You don't have to have an encounter group with everybody about everything, but expand it some. You're going to be better if you can accurately identify it, appropriately express it in a supportive environment. It'll dissipate. The hard thing is to accurately identify it often. Practice self-regulation. These are like muscles that allow you to downgrade. Burnout is what happens, is like if your brain is a machine, it overheats, you got to unplug it every now and then by distracting yourself into some kind of healthy pleasure, or downgrading your intensity. Be aware of your own internal stories. Practice emotional engineering, and I'll close with this one. That sometimes when you got the time, allow yourself to be in what are typically frustrating situations for you, but learn to manage yourself differently. Choose the longest line in the checkout lines in the grocery store, simply to show to yourself, I can calm down, I can distract myself, I can avoid impugning the character of everybody in front of me because they're not as efficient and a type A lunatic as I am in getting things done. And the purpose of this is I develop some new muscles that I can use more reflexively when it really matters. It doesn't really matter in this checkout line unless there's something urgent I got to get to. But you only get good at things as you practice. Practice self-regulation. It's also important to practice countering negative emotions with positive emotions. We harp on this one all the time, but I can't emphasize it enough. And in the social skill segment of emotional intelligence, here too we got to practice. Sometimes you got to be the smartest one in the room. Sometimes you got to give direction. Sometimes you got to correct the flaw in the other person's logic, but not every darn conversation. Sometimes just practice listening and being empathic. Sometimes practice making other people feel good and saying things like, well, I didn't think of that, or thanks for that input, or that's interesting. You can teach them and preach to them tomorrow. Today, sometimes just stretch your own tendencies so that you can foster a broader range of skills for yourself. So in a nutshell, intensively, that's what emotional intelligence is about.
Well, Wayne, I appreciate your wisdom and always learn something every time I talk to you.
It's nice of you.
I really appreciate you coming and sharing this wisdom with us. Thank you.
All right, buddy. It's always great to work with you. I miss all you guys. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Same here. Take care.
Excellent. Bye-bye.